Hello, my name is Michael Anderson, and I've been working in the film and video industry for 25 years. As someone who pitches projects to companies regularly, I can tell you that it's no easy feat. And as many of you are aware, I spearheaded an effort to secure the rights to try to produce a Freddy the Pig cartoon a few years ago. Unfortunately, like so many efforts, we were unable to come to a deal. But we live in hope, as I know that we've all wanted a movie or television adaptation of our favorite pig. What I never knew was that there was an effort to produce a Freddy the Pig cartoon nearly 40 years ago. As those of you who regularly read the Bean Home News or were able to attend, last year the Friends of Freddy held a convention at the Fresno, California, Arne Nixon Center for the Study of Children's Literature. There, nestled in a display of Freddy the Pig books and memorabilia, was a book that laid out a pitch for a Freddy the Pig cartoon. What was particularly surprising was that of all the Freddy-loving attendees at the event, no one had any idea that such a pitch book even existed. Michael Cart seemed to vaguely recall an effort by a guy at Hanna-Barbera to try to do a Freddy the Pig cartoon in the 80s. Hanna-Barbera, of course, being the well-known producer of Saturday morning cartoons like Scooby-Doo, Johnny Quest, and Yogi Bear, among many, many others. But even he seemed a bit confused that there was a pitch book that no one seemed to have known ever existed. Now, for those of you not in the business, a pitch book is basically just a detailed description of a potential series that you use to try to convince a production company or a television network to produce your show. It's about 10 to 20 pages long, and it spells out the characters, the setting, and some potential story ideas. Sometimes they're accompanied by original artwork or a sample script, but a lot of times people who are pitching shows to a network leave those out because, well, hiring a writer or an artist to produce them is a lot of money. And if you can convince the network to pay for it based on just the pitch book, well, so much the better for your bank account. Now, we don't know if any artwork or a script was produced for this particular pitch. The pitch book is undated, and it has no reference to any production company. The only clue to its origins being the 3 credited authors on the cover. And unfortunately, all 3 of these authors have since passed away, so getting any information out of them is going to be difficult. But donning our deerstalker cap and being a bit of a detective like Freddy, we can get a fairly good idea when this pitch came to being. And so the trail starts with these 3 men, 2 of which were at the end of their careers, and one of whom was just starting his. They are Tony Pastor, Bob Ogle, and Dave Ditledge. I hope they will forgive me if I get the pronunciation of their names wrong, but very little has been written or discussed about these men. These were not the titans of animation like Chuck Jones or Tex Avery, and it's doubtful that they'll ever get a major retrospective, but they were solid members of the animation business and did a lot of work over many decades for some very famous and, well, some not so famous animated properties. We'll start with Bob Ogle. Bob was born in 1926 in Sacramento, California. Bob started out as an artist at Walt Disney. Here's a photo from 1957 when he was still working on Sleeping Beauty, taken from Disney animator Floyd Norman's excellent Mr. Fun blog. Bob also did uncredited work on Bambi and Fantasia. But Bob didn't just want to be a part of the animation assembly line, he wanted to be a writer. And with story department openings few and far between at Disney at the time, he eventually decided to strike out on his own. Starting out with stints on Mr. Magoo and the live-action Jim Backus show, Bob landed his most high-profile gig in 1966 when he began working with animation giant Chuck Jones on Tom and Jerry. During this time, Bob wrote the stories for such cartoons as Filet Meow, Rockin' Rodent, The Mouse from Hunger, and Surfboard Cat. Beginning in 1972, Bob began a long-term relationship with Hanna-Barbera Animations and contributed scripts to the Flintstones, Yogi's Gang, Scooby and Scrappy-Doo, The Laugh Olympics, and Richie Rich. Bob also loved to do cartoon voices and performed many uncredited minor roles in the cartoons he worked on. But the late 70s saw him starting to come into his own with major roles, including McBarker, Mr. Magoo's dog in 1977's What's New, Mr. Magoo, and the lead role of Quickie Koala in 1981's The Quickie Koala Show.
Can I help you?
Huh? Yeah, Ted, tie the rope, would ya?
It's tied, Mr. Wool.
Thanks very much, Ted.
Unfortunately, Bob suffered a stroke and passed away in 1984, but not before he took what was to be his final cartoon role and what will be the key to the Freddy the Pig cartoon pitch. But more on that in a little bit. Now, to the next credited writer. David DeTige in many ways had a parallel career to Bob Ogle. He was also born in 1926 in California, and he also started his career at Walt Disney as a story writer in 1953. It should also be pointed out that about this time, David was in a relationship with Phyllis Bounds, and the two married in 1954. Phyllis Bounds just happened to be the niece of Lillian Disney, Walt Disney's wife. His first cartoons for Disney were the Donald Duck shorts, Rugged Bear and Grin and Bear It. Are you sensing a theme? These cartoons were the introduction of Humphrey Bear, who proved so popular that Disney launched a series of Humphrey Bear shorts, which David wrote, including Hooked Bear and In the Bag. David and Phyllis divorced in 1958, about the same time that he stopped working for Disney. After that, David started working with Disney's main animation rival, Warner Brothers, writing the stories for cartoons including Compressed Hair, Daffy's in Trouble, Mother Was a Rooster, and Well-Worn Daffy. In between Warner Brothers shorts, David also wrote for the new Three Stooges and many Pink Panther cartoons. In 1970, he also wrote and directed the feature-length Western animation, The Man from Button Willow. As I said, David and Bob's lives and careers did seem to run parallel in many ways, both being born in 1926 and both dying in 1984 from a heart attack in David's case. Not surprisingly, they worked together on several cartoons, including Dick Tracy, Mr. Magoo, and Baggy Pants and the Nitwits. Yes, that was a real show, and no, I have no idea what it was about. But in 1982, David and Bob found themselves working with a new kid to the animation scene on a Saturday morning cartoon that may be the only series in the history of television to be based off of a greeting card. But more on that in a little bit. This brings us to the third credited creator of this Freddy the Pig pitch, Tony Pastor. Very little is known about Tony Pastor. His career started at Hanna-Barbera, but he is best known for being the voice director for a series of cartoons based off of the Marvel Comics in the 1990s, including Iron Man, the Fantastic Four, Silver Surfer, the Avengers, and Spider-Man. That's right, true believers, he was one of the original Marvel zombies, well before the Marvel Extended Universe became the all-consuming juggernaut that it is today. Superheroes were also part of his other major series, 1986's Defenders of the Earth, which had Flash Gordon teaming up with the Phantom and Mandrake the Magician to fight off Ming the Merciless. But what was the key that brought all these three people together? Shirt tails. What was Shirt Tails and how does it figure into our story? Well, in 1980, Hallmark designer Janet Elizabeth Manco created a series of greeting cards featuring animals wearing t-shirts with pithy sayings on them. These cards became bestsellers, and in true Hollywood fashion, someone decided that, hey, they should have their own Saturday morning cartoon show. And so, this is the first and only cartoon where Bob, David, and Tony are all credited on the same project. Bob and David were both writers on the series, and Tony was the creative supervisor. Bob even did the voice of one of the lead animals, Digger Mole. But what was this series about? How do you adapt a greeting card into a Saturday morning cartoon? One can only imagine the writers as they spitballed ideas. Maybe they all live in a park and get into misadventures, but there's a humorless old park ranger who's sick and tired of their constant shenanigans and makes it his life mission to try to get them under control. Well, maybe that's a bit too Yogi Bear. How about, in addition to that, they also fought crime? We could give them a flying car and a secret underground lair with a supercomputer. It's like Yogi Bear, but if it was also Batman. And that's exactly what they did. It was Saturday morning cartoons in the 80s, man. Don't try to understand it. And believe it or not, it was a hit. Not Cabbage Patch Dolls or Pac-Man huge, but enough that there was a metric ton of tie-in merchandise that you could buy. There were board games and stickers, coloring books, glasses, model cars, card games, watches, Viewmasters, stuffed animals, rubber stamps, lunchboxes, record players. You could even get a Shirt Tails meal at your local Hardee's.
Wow, Shirt Tails!
Be right back.
Hey, you know who I am?
Rick Raccoon from the Shirt Tails!
Right, and this is a hearty Shirt Tails adventure meal. Hamburger, fries, and a soft drink. Look in here. There's a Shirt Tails adventure inside. Take the magic motion decoder and find the ghost.
Holy crap, they fought ghosts too? Who knew? Alas, the Shirt Tails phenomenon was short-lived, and the cartoon was cancelled after only 2 seasons. But during its run, Tony, Bob, and Dave put together the pitch deck for Our Favorite Pig. Having experienced the conceptual everything including the kitchen sink hodgepodge approach to Shirt Tails, you would be forgiven for thinking that their approach to Freddy the Pig might be similar. Maybe Freddy and Jinx will become secret agents and gain a high-tech arsenal provided by Uncle Ben that would put James Bond's Q to shame. Considering that the books themselves had Martians, foreign spies, spaceships, androids, and Santa Claus, that actually wouldn't be that big of a stretch. But no, this adaptation was all set to be more or less faithful to the books, with just a few exceptions, which I will note. The pitch was illustrated with the classic Kurt Weezy illustrations, which are reproduced in black and white, but Freddy himself colored in pink. Here are the highlights of the pitch deck. The pitch begins with a description of the main title sequence, which was to be a rollicking song about Freddy and his friends, accompanied by a montage of newspaper articles where the pictures come to life, showing Freddy as a detective, a magician, a football player, an astronaut, a reporter, a pilot, a camper, even as a dragon slayer. In this iteration of Freddy, he and his animal friends live in a rural community called Farmer Bean's Barnyard, which is a typical farm except that the animals all live in shelters that resemble people's houses. For example, the chicken coops are shaped like houses, with curtains in the windows. The doghouse is a mini bungalow. Hank the horse's stable resembles a horsey bachelor's apartment. And even the mouse hole in the wall containing Eenie, Quick, and Cousin Augustus has an awning and a welcome mat. The pitch points out that our animal stars communicate with each other in a normal fashion, but cannot communicate with humans, like in the earliest of the Freddy novels. When humans are around, they revert to their animalese language of barks, grunts, squeaks, and other such noises. The supporting characters are given a quick description, and many times will have a small gag to give the reader an idea of who they are. Many times they'll also suggest that a character will sound like a particular actor or actress of the era. Be warned, although I will be performing some of these gags and will do my best to at least project the feel of any particular celebrity named, I make no claim to being an impressionist, and I'm sure that some may go badly. In any case, here is the supporting cast that the pitch lists. Alice and Emma are described as very excitable ducks who speak with a slight lisp, as illustrated with the gag. Did you like Freddy's poem? It was a real quack-up. Mrs. Wiggins, the cow, is described as sounding like Charlotte Ray from the Facts of Life. She is a close friend of Freddy's and plays Dr. Watson to Freddy's Sherlock Holmes. There's no quote for her, but it does point out that sometimes they wear disguises. Jinx the cat is described as tough and clever, but sensitive. This is illustrated with the scene of Jinx remarking how, I just love little mice and tender delicious birds. Well, as close friends, of course. to which old Woodley the owl reacts, "Hoo, hoo, hoo," like somebody catching you in a big lie. Old Wibbly the owl is described as sounding like Titus Moody. Do you remember him?
Pepperidge Farm remembers.
The scene they used to illustrate old Wibbly's personality is from Freddy and the Spaceship, when Freddy mistakes old Wibbly for a Martian. "What's the matter, boy? Ain't you never seen a friendly Martian before?" Good gracious, that's outrageous. The cows, Mrs. Wurzburger and Mrs. Wogus, are described as a couple of old, crotchety spinsters who continually butt their noses into everyone else's business, but who also have a strange sense of humor. Charles the Rooster, they write, believes himself to be in charge of the bean farm. He is a braggart and a pseudo-intellectual. As he says, "It's tough to be humble when you have so much to crow about." They write that Charles sounds like the wizard in The Wizard of Oz, and illustrate it with a quote from Freddy the Detective, where Charles is on the stand. So it is with face-saving redemption that I suggest that we face up to the matter facing us. Yes, indeedy. Charles's wife, Henrietta Hen, is described as being a lot brighter than her nutty rooster husband, and is constantly getting Charles out of trouble. They describe her character as being a lot like Edith Bunker from All in the Family. "Oh, Charles, you're driving me bonkers!" Hank the Horse is said to have many nicknames, among them King of the Boneyard and Old Snortenheave. He sounds like Tennessee Ernie Ford. "You pea pickers can play detective if you want to, but I'm heading back to the barn, cousins. These shoes are killing me." Jock the Scotch Collie is also listed as a main character. Jock's appearance as a central character of the cartoon seems a bit strange considering that he only appeared in Freddy Goes to Florida and Freddy the Detective before being phased out in favor of Georgie the dog, who appears in 20 of the subsequent novels. Coupled with the fact that humans cannot understand animals, this leads me to believe that the authors of the pitch actually only read the first couple books in the series and based the cartoon solely on Freddy Goes to Florida and Freddy the Detective. Jock is described as speaking with a Scottish accent and is illustrated with the quote when Mrs. Wiggins falls into a pond. "Aye, lassie, you had us worried for a moment. I didn't know you could do the Australian crawl so well now." Mr. and Mrs. Webb are two happily married spiders, and were to have sped-up voices like Alvin and the Chipmunks. The mice, Eenie, E. Quick, and Cousin Augustus, are described as very British. "Oh, dearie me! Pardon me, dear Cousin Augustus, but did I step on your tail?" "Oh, not at all, not at all. Jump up and down all that you like, if you wish, dear cousin." It tells us that the four mice will remind us of the Three Stooges. The pitch also mentions that besides Mr. and Mrs. Bean, who own the bean farm, other humans will appear from time to time, including Miss McMinicle, Mr. Montague Boner, two crooks, Louie and Red, Sheriff Higgins of Centerboro, and the Snedekers. Again, notice that most of these supporting characters only appear in the earliest of the Freddy novels, while other arguably more beloved characters from later novels like Mr. Camphor, Mrs. Peppercorn, and Mr. Weezer are all conspicuously absent. But what of Freddy? The pitch makes note of the various careers and personality, all very much in keeping with the detective, bank president, adventurer, newspaper editor, piper, magician, camper, football star, cowboy, pilot, astronaut, poet, baseball manager, and dragon slayer that we all know and love. But the pitch adds a new wrinkle that Walter Brooks would never have seen coming. Freddy is described as being hopelessly in love with Miss Piggy. More than that, Freddy is obsessed with her and has written hundreds of love letters to her, but has never received a reply. Would turning Freddy into a creepy stalker have improved the series? I'll let you decide for yourself, although the pitch then goes on to suggest that maybe they could work out a guest appearance from Miss Piggy in the cartoon, which, I'll be honest, I'd love to see a Freddy the Pig Muppets crossover. But we'll see if that ever happens. Several novels are singled out as possible adaptations, including Freddy the Detective, Freddy Rides Again, Oddly enough, not Freddy the Cowboy, Freddy in the Spaceship, and Freddy Goes to Florida. The pitch ends with what appears to be the only original artwork produced. Freddy in boxing gloves, triumphantly proclaiming, "Freddy is a winner!" Would Freddy the Pig have been a winner? Did we miss out on a potential classic cartoon? Or did we dodge a bullet? It's hard to say. While some of the ideas suggested by the pitch seem questionable to our taste, there's a lot that could have been changed between the pitch and the premiere. But given the state of television animation at the time, unfortunately, I'd have to say that the chances of it being a classic were slim, but you can never be sure. Maybe one of these days we'll finally have the cartoon adaptation that the books truly deserve. Until then, we can only sit and wonder at the roads not taken.